When people think of the 70s, the first things that pop into their heads are hippies and peace signs. However, that's not the whole truth. Those things are just a small part of what the 70s were. In some aspects, the 70s were a continuation of the 60s. Just like the previous decade, people fought viciously for equality. In addition to women fighting for equal rights, groups such as gays, lesbians, Native Americans, and African Americans fronted their own movements. But others soon became frustrated with the whining protesters, and they believed that the government favored them. This group of people formed a party called the Silent Majority and strove to stay true to traditional conservative values. However, President Richard Nixon's actions in the Watergate scandal had severely damaged the people's trust in the federal government's good intentions. As a result, divisions and disappointment set the tone for public life heading into the 80s. On the front, relations between the U.S. and the Communists began to improve. This was called the détente period. Nixon visited Communist China and a few years later, Russia. While there, he met as Secretary General of the Soviet Communist Party. They both agreed it would be better for their countries to start trading again. Thus, the threat of nuclear war was greatly reduced. The Cold War had begun to thaw. Green was a thing to beat during the 1970s. After an industrial waste accident at Love Canal, New York, and a nuclear waste leak at 3 Mile Island, Pennsylvania, people became extremely concerned with the state of the environment. Soon, pretty much everyone was joining in the fight to protect the planet. Earth Day came to be as a result. The first Earth Day was held April 22, 1970, and was celebrated with speeches and marches. Congress passed various environmental protection acts a few years later. Conservationism eventually became so mainstream that a character named Woodsy the Owl interrupted cartoons reminding kids to be environmentally friendly. Economically, people were down and out during the 1970s. It was the worst situation since the Great Depression. Unemployment rates were extremely high, and manufacturing industries declined greatly as a result of the inflation. The oil crisis of 1973 and 1978 added a strain to the situation. Oil prices quadrupled overseas, causing the U.S. to buy less and ration what they had. Because OPEC had to ration oil, gas had to be rationed as well. Thus, there were always extremely long lines outside of service stations. Despite all the struggles and economic problems, the culture of the 70s flourished. Forms of punk and rock music made their first appearance, and artists like Elvis and the Jackson 5 were all the rage. The movie industry was booming, and Hollywood was cranking out films like Star Wars and Jaws. Modern computing was born in the 1970s, and technology made huge advances, like the first video games, and microwaves also experienced a surge in popularity. Fashion trends turned from mini skirts and suits towards maxi dresses, bell-bottoms, and tie-dye. So, the next time you hear about the 70s, hopefully more than just hippies and peace signs will pop into your head.